If we haven't met yet, my name is Ana Lopez. I'm a sexologist, sex coach, and smut consultant. I'm the owner of Sex and Spanglish, as well as the hostess of this podcast that also goes by the same name, Sex and Spanglish. Sexologist me is currently completing a dissertation on what it means to be a Latina and a sexual being at the same time. And in the near future, I'm going to be interviewing states-based Latinas about their sexual experiences through the eyes of a Latina. So stay tuned for any updates on that. If you're looking for a Latina sex coach, you can work with me one of three ways. The first is La Sinvergüenza Symposium, which is my 12-month group coaching program uniquely made for Latinas. Second, Textual Healing, which is my one-on-one coaching program done completely via app-based messaging. And then there's Operation Orgasm, which is my online independent study course that teaches you everything that you need to know about having mind-blowing sex on demand, even if your partner doesn't know what the hell they're doing. All of the program information to any of these programs and their respective links are located in the show notes of this episode. If you write sex scenes, we need to talk, as I'm currently accepting consulting clients. I work with readers to avoid getting canceled and to stop perpetuating sex negative narratives. Authors, talking to you, y'all have the best intentions, and some of you are still perpetuating sex negative narratives, and I want to help you stop that. So you can download a free copy of How to Write Sex Positive Sex Scenes Without Boring Your Readers using the link in the show notes of this episode. My vision for my business and the work that I do in the world as a sexologist, sex coach, and smut consultant is to pave the way for the Latina woman to live a life sin vergüenza by embracing their individual sexuality and their Latinidad at the same damn time. My mission with Sex and Spanglish is to provide culturally relevant sex ed that centers the individual and their personal desires and values while shifting the sex negative narratives that pose as a barrier to true guilt-free pleasure. In this episode, I talk about effective communication and particularly communication outside of the bedroom. Now, at this point that I'm recording this, I've recorded the entire episode and I realized that I didn't explain what effective communication is and how I define effective communication. So here I am, welcoming you to this episode about communication outside of the bedroom. And I want to talk really quickly about effective communication so you have that top of mind as you are listening to this episode. So effective communication, as I define it, contains three components: emotional regulation, self-awareness, and having your own back. So I'm going to break down each one of these. Emotional regulation really just means allowing yourself to have emotions, both positive and negative, without ignoring them or letting them control you. So this means allowing yourself to be pissed off, for example, without saying things that you're going to regret later. Being pissed off without yelling, seeking revenge, throwing shit, right? Essentially without being a toxica. All of those things that you imagine of like being petty and being a toxica, those are you letting your emotions control you versus you controlling your emotions. Now, I want to point out that you being in control of your emotions does not mean you're just shoving them down and acting like they don't exist, drowning them with a glass of wine or a night out with friends, distracting yourself, right? Acting like you're not feeling those emotions. That is not being in control of your emotions either. That's pretending like you don't have them. Emotional regulation is allowing yourself to have emotions, allowing them to move through your body, processing those emotions and showing up in a way that aligns with your values, right? This is going to be an entire other episode, and I think I actually did a few episodes on emotions already, so if you want to go back and listen to those. But anyways, that is emotional regulation for the purposes of the definition of effective communication. Now, there's self-awareness. Self-awareness is an understanding of your thoughts and emotions. So any emotions or feelings that you are having, any thoughts that you're having an understanding of those thoughts and actually knowing what your thoughts and feelings are. It is so common for clients to come to me and I will ask them like, oh, so like, what are your thoughts on this? Or like, how are you feeling about this? And they'll be like, I don't know. That's not an answer. That tells me that you lack self-awareness, which this isn't a way to judge you. And actually growing up in a Latino household, like it's normal that you don't really have that self-awareness, especially if you weren't allowed to have that self-awareness or weren't given the opportunity to build that skill or to build that self-awareness in a safe space. So I get it. This isn't a way to judge you, but I'm saying that it is very common amongst the people that I work with. So self-awareness and understanding of your thoughts and emotions and having your own back. Really owning your own experience, even when others don't understand or, don't get it. The willingness to walk away and the willingness to meet your own needs and desires. And I want to point out that it is okay if you don't know how to communicate effectively. If you've heard this definition and you're like, oh shit, I don't know how to communicate effectively, that is okay. Most of us don't. It wasn't modeled for most of us. It wasn't modeled for myself either. I had to teach myself, which is why I'm here teaching you. So again, to summarize, effective communication is having emotional regulation, having your own back, and having self-awareness. Now, let's get into the episode about conversations that you will have outside of the bedroom. There are only 3 things that you need in order to have mind-blowing sex on demand: an understanding of your body, the ability to effectively communicate that, and the skills of rest and rejuvenation. And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about effective communication, specifically communication that happens outside of the bedroom. A vast majority of conversations about sex should actually happen outside of the bedroom, meaning y'all are fully clothed, you're not in the bedroom, right? You can be in a common living area, you can be out to dinner. I don't give a fuck where you have these conversations, but the idea is that you're not having them in the moment, right? There are, however, 4 types of conversations that happen in the bedroom. And I covered each of these in depth in last week's episode, but I want to quickly review them and then get into talking about conversations outside of the bedroom. So you can easily remember the 4 types of conversations that happen in the bedroom, aka in the moment, using the acronym DUST, D-U-S-T. D stands for desire, so something that you want. If there is something that you want that you are not currently getting, that is something that you bring up in the moment. This could be something such as foreplay. You want him to change the pace a little bit, things like that. U stands for uncomfortable or don't want. If there is something uncomfortable happening, something you don't want, you need to bring that up in the moment if you don't want it to continue, right? And I talk about all of this, again, in last week's episode, so definitely go back and listen. S stands for stop. If you want to stop at any time, again, I don't give a fuck if he's about to come or not, you can tell him to stop, or her, or whoever it is that you're having sex with. If you want to stop, you can stop at any given time. And that needs to be done right then and there. T stands for trigger. Now, I'm going to do an entire episode on this, but if you have a trigger, that may be a conversation that you want to have in the moment. And it may also be something that you just kind of want to mention and then continue on. And there is some nuance here. So again, I'm going to do an entire episode on triggers and sexual trauma and all of the things, but that is not today's case. Today, we are talking about sex outside of the bedroom. I just wanted to really quickly review DUST. So desire, uncomfortability, something you don't want, stopping, and triggering. Those are conversations that you have in the bedroom, in the moment. This episode, however, we are talking about conversations outside of the bedroom, everything else outside of the DUST container. So the very first thing you're going to do is to get clear on your thoughts and feelings. You need to understand what's going on in your head before sharing this with your partner. Now, there's going to be times where you're going to gain more understanding of yourself, of your own thoughts and feelings, of your own perspective, of your own stance on things while having a conversation. I myself am a verbal processor. So sometimes I will start having a conversation and be like, oh shit, actually, that's not why I think what I think. And I will come up like with some other shit on the spot, right? But I still need to go into the conversation having some idea of what my thoughts and feelings are. If I'm just going in knowing jack shit, that is not helpful, right? So you need to go in having an idea of what it is that you want to talk about, why it is that you want to talk about, and what are you hoping to get out of the conversation. Now, I'm going to give you specific examples of what this looks like later in this episode, so do not worry. But the first thing is you want to get clear on your thoughts and feelings. Next, you want to ask for consent to have the conversation. So you're doing this for two reasons. One is you want to make sure that the person that you're talking to actually wants to have the conversation and actually wants to have the conversation right then and there. So it's possible that they want to have the conversation, but they're just tired or they don't feel like having that conversation right then and there. And that is okay. It's also possible that they don't want to have the conversation at all. And that's actually also okay. And it's good information to have, right? And I'm going to go into further depth about that. But you want to make sure, one, that they actually want to have the conversation. You also want to ask for consent because you want to make sure that they're in the right headspace, right? There's a different headspace that you're in when you're having a fun and playful conversation in the way that you would have a conversation on like a girls' night out or a game night or, whatever, versus a deep, serious conversation or a conversation where you're making like a lot of decisions and things like that. Like those are two different headspaces. So if your partner has come home from a long day at work or just had like a really hard day for whatever reason, like they may not be up for having that conversation. Maybe you're the one that has experienced, maybe like you're on your period or something, or your mom's pissing you off or, whatever. There are multiple reasons why you may not be in the headspace to have that conversation, which is why consent is so important. It's not effective. Again, we're talking about effective communication. It is not effective to just dump shit on people. It's not helpful, nor is it effective. So you ask for consent. When you ask for consent, there are 3 possible answers that you can receive when asking for consent. So you're like, hey, I want to talk to you about this thing. Is now a good time? They could say, yes, I want to have this conversation right now. They could also say, I want to have this conversation, but just not right now. They could also say, I don't want to have this conversation at all. So let's get into what do you do in each of these scenarios. So the first scenario is, I don't want to have this conversation at all. If they don't want to have the conversation at all, you get to decide what you want to do with this information. Do you want to continue having a relationship with someone who doesn't want to have these types of conversations? Is it something you're just willing to like walk away from in terms of like the thing that you want to bring in the bedroom? Or are you willing to be with someone or to have sex with someone that doesn't want to have conversations about your sex life, right? Like you get to make that decision, but asking for consent really brings this to light. Like, are they willing to have this conversation or not? Okay. Second option, they say, yes, I want to have this conversation right now. So like, yes, I want to have this conversation, and yes, I can have it right now. Let's do this. This is easy. You have the conversation. That's it. You ask for consent. They say yes. You have the conversation. And I'm going to go over logistics on like what that looks like later on. But first, let's go back to the other scenarios. The last scenario is you ask for consent and they say, I want to have this conversation, but not right now. So what you do in that event or in that case is you schedule a day and time to have the conversation. And when that day and time comes, you want to check in to see if it's still a good time and then have the conversation. So for example, let's say when I'm recording this, it is a Tuesday evening. So let's say my partner comes home and I'm like, hey, I want to talk to you about something. Is now a good time? He's like, yeah, I want to have this conversation with you, but actually it's been a really long day. I worked overtime today, blah, 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 whatever. So I'd be like, okay, cool. Like, when do you want to have this conversation? He might be like, you know what, maybe not tomorrow because like I'm really tired today. So I'm probably going to be tired tomorrow. Like, let's do it this weekend when we go out for dinner. Okay, cool. So I know in my mind, this weekend, we're going to have this conversation. Then when dinner comes, I'm going to say, hey, is now still a good time to have this conversation? And then go from there. And if for whatever reason it isn't, because life happens, be open to rescheduling the conversation. Now, there is something to say. Geez, if your partner keeps like wanting to reschedule or somehow avoiding the conversation, But just don't go in assuming that they're avoiding the conversation simply because they're not prepared or not mentally in a place to have the conversation, right? Just like always give them I don't want to say always, try and give them the benefit of the doubt, right? But if you're noticing that as a pattern, that is also something that you can bring up if they're continually rescheduling the conversation. And you get to decide, again, what to do with that information. So now that we've covered the 3 possible answers, let's get into how the actual conversation is going to go. So I'm going to cover 3 different types of conversations, and these types of conversations are the most common conversations that take place with the people that I work with. They are very like general, like I'm not going to give like super specific, like you were going to talk about this very specific thing. I'm going to give some there. I've broken them into 3 very broad categories. But if there's a conversation that you want to have and you feel like it's not covered in the examples that I provide here or in these categories, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram at Sex and Spanglish. Again, it's Spanglish, not Spanish. And I'll give you a direction on how to have that conversation. And maybe it is covered here and you're just not sure how that is relevant. Let's talk about it. I got you. So, first conversation type is you've been triggered during a session. Again, I'm going to do an entire episode dedicated to this topic, but I want to leave it here for context. So if you are triggered during a session and you want to have this conversation like outside of the moment, right, outside of the bedroom, you're more than welcome to do so. But I do want to say that there are some people that like want to continue. So again, I just wanted to leave it here for like a quick talking point that there are some times that you will be triggered during sex and you'll actually want to have the conversation like outside of the bedroom, outside of the moment when you are no longer triggered. And that is totally available to you. But again, I'm going to give that its own episode because I really want to give it the time that it deserves. So that said, that is just one type that you can have outside of the bedroom. Conversation type 2 is you want to add something to the bedroom. So some examples could be a toy, a third person, a couple, whatever. You want to try something new. So maybe like a new position or a sexual act. Maybe the first time you're doing anal or pegging or, something along those lines. So basically you're adding something new to the bedroom, something you've never done before, a person, a thing, a noun, right? A noun or a verb, right? So first, you're going to prep for this conversation. And you're going to prep for this conversation by getting clear on 3 things. It is, what do you want to add? And let me say these questions and then I'll go back. So, what do you want to add? Why do you want to add it? And what do you think you will get once you add it? So, when I ask you, what do you want to add? It's like, what specifically are you hoping to add? Get really clear. I don't want you to be vague in your conversations because vaguity, is that a word? Vagueness is not helpful in effective communication. We are being effective here. So I want you to be crystal clear on what it is that you want to add, right? Maybe there are several options that you have and you haven't landed on one yet, but you're like, this is kind of the things that I was thinking. Great. But I want you to be crystal clear on what it is that you want to add. I also want you to be clear on why you want to add it. Now, this is where I want to throw in a caveat. By getting clear on why you want to do something, it's not so that you justify yourself. All your desires are justified. You don't need to justify them. Even if your partner doesn't agree, I don't give 2 shits because you still get to have your desires and they get to have their own desires. But being clear on why it is that you want the thing that you want makes it easier for you to express that to your partner, to effectively communicate that to your partner. And it leaves less room for misunderstanding, right? It leaves less room for your partner jumping to conclusions. Now, They may still, again, disagree with you. They may still jump to conclusions. They may have their feelings hurt for whatever reason or what have you. They still get to have their own thoughts, feelings, and opinions about this. That said, it does leave a lot less room for misunderstanding and jumping to conclusions if you are explaining your thought process. Because remember, your partner is not in your brain. They are only hearing what you are saying. They're not reading in between the lines, and they shouldn't have to, nor should you. We're talking about effective communication here. We are not leaving things up for interpretation. We are saying what we mean, meaning what we say. Okay? So, again, what do you want to add? Why do you want to add it? And what do you think you will get once you add it in? So, an example. Let's say you want to add a toy in the bedroom. What do you want to add? Okay, you want to add sex toys. Great. What type of sex toy? Like, oh, I want to add like something that's going to stimulate my anal cavity. So maybe I want to add in a butt plug, right? That's the option that you come up with. Okay, great. Why do you want to add it? Well, I want dual stimulation. I really want clitoral stimulation, but I also want like, I really want vaginal stimulation, but I also really want anal stimulation. And so I'm hoping like with the butt plug, like it will be, that'll be the dual stimulation. And then what do you think you will get once you add it in? Oh, well, it's something new to my sexual experience. And also, again, I really want vaginal and anal stimulation. Great. So you're clear. You've asked for consent. You're ready to have the conversation. Conversation time comes. You say, hey, I was thinking that we could add toys to the bedroom. And more specifically, I was thinking like a butt plug because I'm really looking for vaginal and anal stimulation like at the same time. I love both, as you might know, and I think the experience of having both at the same time would be really hot. I'm actually getting like just turned on thinking about it. So like I really want to try something new in the bedroom, and this is the kind of the idea that I came up with. What are your thoughts? And then you leave it open for your partner to respond. Now, an aviso, a warning. Your partner is allowed to say no to your desires. They are allowed to be like, actually, I don't want to have sex with you when you have a butt plug in. I am not saying that that is morally correct or incorrect. I'm just saying they are allowed to say no. They get to say no to having sex with you when you have a butt plug in. They're allowed to do that. And I'm going to be dedicating an entire episode to this topic and how to navigate your partner saying no. But in the meantime, keep in mind that your partner is allowed to say no, just like you are. And it's your job to honor that no while also honoring your desires. So definitely stay tuned for that other episode. But I want you to just keep in mind that effective communication doesn't always mean you're going to get what you want. It just means that you're sharing your perspective. And what this does is it gets you results so much fucking faster. And two, it gives you so much information about your partner where you can decide, you know what? This person doesn't want to ever do anything new. They are never willing to compromise, like nothing. Okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to be with this person or not, right? It gives you so much information where if you leave it in vague land, in general land, you're like, not sure, and then you're just dissatisfied, right? So effective communication helps you make decisions a lot faster because you have a lot more data points. You have a lot more information. Okay, moving on to conversation type 3. Something is wrong. This is another conversation you would have outside of the bedroom. Conversation type 3. Not enough sex, too much sex, low libido, you're too tired to have sex at night, outside stresses are impacting how you feel about sex, maybe your partner isn't lasting long enough, they're lasting too long, maybe there's other issues about your partner's quote-unquote performance, right? These are just examples. This isn't like an exhaustive list by any means, but if something is going wrong, essentially, this is a conversation you could have outside of the bedroom. So you're going to prepare for this type of conversation by getting clear on 4 things. What exactly is wrong? What is the impact of this problem on you? What is the impact of this problem on your sexual experiences? And what do you propose happens to change it? Actually, it's 5. Just kidding. And what do you think this proposed change will do? So again, what exactly is wrong? What is the impact of this problem on you? What is the impact of this problem on your sexual experiences? What do you propose happens to change it? And what do you think this proposed change will do? So let's go over a specific example. Let's imagine that you want to have the conversation about outside stresses impacting how you feel about sex. Great. You've got consent. You're ready to have the conversation. You're preparing at this point. What exactly is wrong? There's too much on your plate and it's leaving you resentful and exhausted. Great. What is the impact of this problem on you? Well, you're resentful and you're feeling exhausted, and that's leading you to not desire sex even though you do want sex. What's the impact of this problem on your sexual experience? Well, your libido is diminishing because of the stress, and when you do have it, you don't enjoy it because you're tired. What do you propose happens to change it? Your partner takes over bath time 2 nights a week, right? Again, this is just an example. What do you think this proposed change will do? You'll have some time to decompress before bed and hopefully gain some energy for sex. Perfect. So now with that preparation, you're ready to have the conversation. Again, you've already asked for consent. You've prepared. It's time to have the conversation. You sit down and you say, hey, I'm feeling really exhausted lately, and it's leading me to be kind of resentful of you. I'm also noticing that it's lowering my sex drive, and when we do have sex, I'm not enjoying it as much as I normally would because I'm so tired. And I was brainstorming ways to solve for this, and I really need your help with bath time, at least like 2 nights a week, so I can decompress before bed. And I think that this is going to help not only with my exhaustion, but hopefully it's going to increase my libido. What do you think? And you leave it open for them to answer. And warning, and aviso, your partner is allowed to say no. They're allowed to propose a different solution. They're also allowed to not want to help at all. And again, I'm not justifying this. I am in no way saying this is the right thing to do. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just saying they're allowed to say no. And we know this is true because so many partners don't help their partners with the household labor, including children. Again, I'm no way saying that this is right. This is morally correct. I'm not trying to be on their side, anything like that. But it's a possibility that exists, and I want you to prepare for this possibility. Okay? Again, effective communication isn't about getting what you want. Effective communication isn't about your partner agreeing with you necessarily. It's really just sharing your perspective with your partner, attempting to come to a solution together as a couple or throuple or what have you, right? To find solutions to things that are going on. And at the very least, you will get information about your partner that is necessary for you to determine whether or not you want to continue in this relationship. So, no matter the conversation you have, it may not go as anticipated. You may discover that your partner doesn't want to change anything. And again, they're allowed to do nothing if they want to. You're also allowed to do nothing if you want to. That said, it doesn't mean you have to stay in this type of relationship if you don't want to. You're allowed to leave at any time, and you also get to decide when and if you're going to leave. So, very quickly, I want to summarize the types of conversations you should be having outside of the bedroom. Again, it is anything that is outside of the DUST acronym. Anything, so DUST again stands for desire, uncomfortability, not wanting something, stopping and triggering. Everything else happens outside of the bedroom. The main conversations I see happening outside of the bedroom are triggers, something going wrong, and something that you want to add to the bedroom, whether it be a person, place, thing, or a verb, right? Okay, go out and have conversations. And again, if y'all have any questions about conversations that you want to have and you're like, where does this fall? Message me, send me a DM at Sex in Spanglish. Again, it's Spanglish, not Spanish. And I will see y'all next week.